Hi, this is Tim with RCNoob.com, and I've got an overview of the Traxxas TRX-4 Sport. Spoiler alert, I really like this truck a lot. This truck, the TRX-4, has been a vehicle on my must-have, want-to-have list ever since it came out over a year ago. The Land Rover Defender, even though I'm not a huge Land Rover fan, that truck just looked cool. Traxxas had an interesting approach, having it be their first scale trail machine. And then they came out with the tactical unit, which slightly lower price point than the Land Rover Defender because of the non-licensed body, but still over $400 for that machine. Same bells and whistles under the hood. Then you have the ultra beautiful, and I do mean ultra beautiful, Ford Bronco. Again, same story, bells and whistles, beautiful, beautiful looking body, a lot of body detail, just a really cool looking machine. But again, that price point of over $400. Don't get me wrong, I think you get a lot for your money, but I was hoping that Traxxas somewhere down the line would come out with something a little more baseline. Not so many bells and whistles. Not that those aren't great to have, but sometimes you just need a truck that's bare bones, basic, and you can just go and drive and bash and have a good time with. Well, that vehicle has arrived, and that's the Traxxas TRX-4 Sport. And the Sport model, as soon as it was announced, I was incredibly excited for it. It is basically the same TRX-4 platform that you've come to know if you're familiar, again, with the previous TRX-4 models, including the assembly kit that they've released as well. But it doesn't include a few items which helps keep the price down. So if you're looking at something, whether you're trying to get into the hobby, whether you're trying to explore the scale scene, if you're a fan of Traxxas and you want to check out their TRX-4 line, this might be a good vehicle for you to start out and check out. Now, before I get into the basics of the TRX-4 Sport, let's just real quickly go over what it has and doesn't have when compared to the other TRX-4 models. So this model does not have remote lockable and unlocking diffs, does not have a 2-speed shiftable remote transmission. You see that the controller is very basic. It's just the TQ, it's not the TQI. So when you take those pieces out, you end up lowering the price around $100, by about $100, give or take. So the TRX-4 Sport, again, price-wise, lines up very well against the Axial SCX-10 like the Deadbolt, or even some of the other ready-to-run models, some of their Jeeps. It lines up very well against the Charisma Scale Adventure models. Again, the price on this are between $339 and $359. Again, I kicked this video off by saying I really like this truck. I'm very impressed with it. Saw it in a couple hobby shops, squeezed the tires, checked out the insides, very impressed by what Traxxas has done. Very excited to get a first-hand look at this vehicle and just see how it's all put together, what makes it tick, and compare it to some of the other trail rigs that I have in my lineup. So first things first, let's take a look at the controller. Again, it's the Traxxas TQ, not the TQI. Very basic 2-channel controller, steering, throttle, and steering trim. That's about it. And you do have your set button up here, on-off switch in the back. So again, basic controller. Under the body, the TRX-4 chassis looks a lot like you'd find on the other TRX-4 models. Does not have the fenders. However, it does have these like interconnecting trays here that if you did have fenders, they would probably line up quite well. The rock slider is an interesting little setup with the body on. There's actually a little channel or a groove here that the side of the body will slip into. That's a nice feature in that it doesn't allow the body to move around too much or flare outward or get caught on something. I'm not familiar with the other models specifically, whether or not they have that same feature. I like that on this model. I don't like it for the simple fact that I like to pull my bodies out a little bit to reach in and plug in my batteries. But again, that's a nice little feature. Keeps everything nice and tight. The front body mount posts are actually angled inward a little bit, so they tend to pinch and kind of hold the body down a little bit more. So when you combine that with the side channels and the rear body posts, the body is very snug and holds to the chassis quite well, even though you may not have the body pins in. Now, I would still recommend running it with the body pins, but if you're just looking to buzz around indoors, you don't really need to put the pins in from what I've seen. Like the other models of TRX-4, the Sport features a front-mounted motor. It's a 21-turn, 550 size Traxxas Titan. Very basic setup. Now you may see some of these silver hardware pieces sprinkled throughout. Those are not stock. I have replaced about 90% of the hardware on this model with Team K&K hardware. I've heard a lot about Team K&K in the past and thought that this machine might be an interesting model to test out their hardware on. So that's why I've got all the silver hardware. Stock out of the box, you're going to find the black standard hex head hardware. Moving our way back, here's the ESC. Receiver sits over on this side in the tray. You see the little antenna tube sticking up here. Here is your battery tray with a nice easy release strap. Again, depending on the thickness of your battery, there's either a 23 millimeter height or a 26 millimeter height. So again, depending on how thick your battery might be, you have a little bit of room to maneuver there. Once the battery's inside, it fits very nice. Really no complaints about that. I think that's a very nice setup. What I like about this vehicle, probably the most, is a blend between the shocks and the tires, and we'll take a closer look at those in a little bit. Shock movement is very nice and smooth. Tires, plenty of grip, plenty of traction. They really impressed me, especially when I thought that they weren't going to have as much grip as they actually do. Overall, the chassis is very stable, very solid. Just looking at it, it does look like those frame rails run a little bit narrower than some of the other models I've come in contact with. Really, I have no complaints about this vehicle. I've had fun driving it around the backyard. I've had fun driving it around indoors. It's done everything I've asked it to do. It's taken on everything I've asked it to do, and it's a very solid chassis platform. One of the biggest highlights for me on the TRX-4 Sport, and really any other TRX-4 model, would be the tires. When I went to my local hobby shop and felt these, they didn't feel as grippy or as sticky as they really are. Once you get this thing out and about, though, they're very impressive. They grip incredibly well. They have an incredible amount of traction. The tread is deep enough, and the treads are just sticky enough to allow this thing to claw over anything I've put in front of it so far. And to this point, I really haven't gone out and driven over much. It's mainly been a lot of wood in various states of natural decay. So the wood itself isn't very stable in some spaces. So you either have bark or you have deteriorating wood. And I'll have actually wood slivers and things like that, shavings, come off as this thing kind of claws its way over the tires. It's very impressive. I did pick up a pair of Duratrax Deep Woods tires to put on this, simply because I wasn't sure what these were going to do out of the box. I might keep these on here. I think I'll throw those Deep Woods on at some point just to kind of get a comparison between the two sets. But so far, I'm very impressed with these stock tires. Now, I promised a closer look at the shocks, and there they are. So again, shocks are shocks, but these, for some reason, feel buttery smooth. Very impressed with just the amount of travel that they have, the amount of flex that the vehicle has. Between the tires and the shocks, I think those might be the two most impressive pieces of the TRX-4 Sport, at least so far, for me. It's just a solid performer, and I can't. I'm really at a loss of words for how much fun this vehicle is to drive and drive over different obstacles. And really, the shocks are a big part of it. You can see that they are adjustable through this adjustment ring. You just turn it up, turn it down, depending on how much tension you want to put on your springs. And these, again, just buttery smooth. Buttery smooth. Okay, I got to get onto something else before I zone out here on shocks. another area carryover from the other Traxxas TRX-4 models that you'll find on the Sport are the portal axles. Now the portal axles do a great job of increasing ground clearance, and again, between the tires and the tire grip and the portal axles, I really think that that aids in how this vehicle is able to drive over as many things as it is with as much ease as it is. Now, looking at them like this, you might be thinking, wow, that's great. But how do they compare to other models? Well, I brought up my SCX-10. Now, granted, this is the classic SCX-10, but it should give you a very clear indicator of how much additional ground clearance you get from having these portal axles. So the TRX-4 is on the left, SCX-10 on the right. I also get a great opportunity to compare the tires. Now I see that the heights on these tires are the same, which honestly surprises me. I thought that these were a little bit taller, but you can see that the tires on the TRX-4 are a bit wider than the stock SCX-10 tires. But we're here to talk about axles. Again, you look at the portal axle, how high it is. If I run a line across, it's basically sitting on top of the axle on the SCX-10. Now the SCX-10 2, which I don't have, has a narrower axle, doesn't necessarily have a higher axle. So again, more ground clearance out of the TRX-4 Sport and the other TRX-4 models, but that's not to say the SCX-10 isn't a high performer as well. Before I wrap up this overview of the TRX-4 Sport, I want to give you a real quick look at the underside. Again, you've seen one trail truck, you've seen them all. There's the TRX-4 Sport. 2 drive shafts, metal links, including the steering linkage, which is, again, nice to see. Metal upper links as well, so it's very sturdy, very durable. Having this tray up here, both of these trays are nice just to keep debris and other stuff from popping up and getting in here. You can get stuff in through the fenders, and I've pulled grass and other things out of the chassis. But again, solid little setup. Looking at the back bumper, you see there are some scale details. There's a little trailer hitch port here, so if you have a trailer hitch for a 1/10 scale vehicle, you could put it in there. Bumper, very solid. Traxxas did improve the approach angle on this model versus the others. I don't have those exact dimensions or the degrees of approach off the top of my head, but it is slightly improved over other models. That's the Traxxas TRX-4 Sport. Again, price between $339 and $359, depending on where you shop. Solid rig, solid performer. I'm looking forward to getting a lot more runtime with this vehicle in the future, the near future. It's been a game of eeny, meeny, miny, mo between this and my recently updated SCX-10, which I will say I've recently had outside and love the improvements that I've made. Love the different aspects that each piece brings to it, especially that steering servo. I know it's overkill, but man, is that just a nice steering servo. So if you're wanting to know more about that upgrade series, check out my SCX-10 overhaul videos, also on this YouTube channel. Stay tuned to this channel. We're gonna have a lot more indoor crawling, outdoor crawling comparisons. Got a cool little upgrade for the steering wheel on the TQ controller that we're going to be doing shortly, so stay tuned for that. Thank you for checking out the video. Thank you for loving the hobby. We'll talk with you guys later.